Hey everyone, it's Rob Ryder. This map is from the Bureau of Land Management, and it's where Surprise, Arizona would be today. And so this is a 36 square mile section of Arizona. And so Bobby Kirby, who I've done a couple of videos with here and have worked with for quite some time, lived at the time in what would be Section 9, which has 3 divisions in it, and those are the record landowners as of, I don't know if you can read this down here, 2014. I'll show it better in a second. So this map was made in 2014, and it shows that in Section 9 of this survey township, that there are only 3 owners of land. Well, of course, that doesn't make any sense. This is a city, suburb. You know, there's hundreds of houses, thousands of houses, but none of those people are listed. And if you were to order one of these, all these numbers on top then are the land patents that were supposedly given for these particular sections of land. Now, as we'll see in a bit, I don't know that the direction of this name is proper compared to what the public land survey says it should be, and that's part of what we're going to talk about. Is somehow they're keeping us off the land, but on the map then, because I didn't say it, they did. First of all, right, the scale is in chains, right? So there you go. It's in chains. I believe that's the proper method to do it. And warning statement. This plat is the Bureau's record of title. So as far as the Bureau, now they don't say who the Bureau is, right? I mean, it's not like they're shy of using words. They could have said the Bureau of Land Management. So I don't know what Bureau. Bureaus. Numerous bureaus. We've got all sorts of bureaus. Anyways, this plat is their record of title. And so whoever holds these land patents is, as far as the bureaus are concerned, still the landowners. And that was as of 7/17/2014. And these are 1 mile squares with, 2 owners. I just don't think this is how it works anymore, right? We're not talking in the well, we are talking in the desert, but this is Surprise, Arizona, in the desert. And so the Cadastral Survey for land ownership and poll tax registration on Thursday, November 17, 2016. I am Rob Ryder. My email address is quarterrecord@aol.com, which I would prefer that if you want to contact me, that's how you did it. However, there's my phone number if you need it. It's 616-712-6179. But if you leave comments on some spot and think I'm going to answer them, I don't even read the comments. That's really bad to do. So I just stay away from them. And but if you do want to talk to me, hey, just send me an email, quarterrecord@aol.com. I'll try to answer. I do a fairly good job. I can't say I get to all of them. And if you're asking me about something I said 4 years ago, I don't really care, right? I'm only really talking about things I'm doing today. 4 years ago was learning to talk about the things I'm going to talk about today. That's my opinion. And, well, I'm going to stick with it for now. So, what about poll taxes? Well, let's get into this. So, in the United States, payment of a poll tax is a prerequisite to registration for voting in a number of states. Well, there you go. If you didn't pay the poll tax, you couldn't vote. The tax emerged in some states of the United States in the 19th century as part of the Jim Crow laws, blah, 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 blah. In 1937, the United States Supreme Court found that prerequisite that poll taxes be paid for registration to vote was constitutional. The case involved Georgia poll tax of $1. So the states could have poll taxes. What's the chances that the United States could have a poll tax? And we're not paying it. And how would you know that you have paid it? Well, you would be on a cadastral survey. And that's what we're going to be looking at. So is there a federal poll tax? Number of states equals United States. And before we get in too deep, please, if you can donate. this is how I make my living, quote unquote, and I can't pay my rent again. Can't buy any food. So please help. My PayPal account is my daughter's name, Ashley Rytlewski at gmail.com. ASHLEYRYTLEWSKI@gmail.com. You could use the mail. That works too. Robert Rytlewski at 10955 14 Mile Road, Rockford, Michigan, 49341. Or if you wanted to use a credit card, just send me an email to courtofrecord@AOL.com, and I think I can make that happen. Whatever you can do, it's greatly appreciated. And without further ado, so what is this all about? Where are we now? Let's go look at all things cadastral. So really, this video is going to be me reading a bunch of facts written about the idea of a cadastre or cadastral. And so a cadastre, using a cadastral survey or cadastral map, is a comprehensive register of the real estate or real property metes and bounds of a country. Okay? In most countries, legal systems have developed around original administrative systems and use the cadastre to define the dimensions and locations of land parcels described in legal documentation. So what is the proper legal description of your property will have been done by cadastre, a cadastral survey. The cadastre is a fundamental source of data in disputes and lawsuits between landowners. In the United States, Cadastre Survey with the Bureau of Land Management maintains a record of all public lands. Such surveys often require detailed investigation of the history of land use, legal accounts, and other documents. Now let's think about this. They maintain records of all public lands, which means they must be able to differentiate the public lands from the private lands. So they would have to show you, well, we gave this to somebody as private land, which is what these township surveys are supposed to be. Right? That these are the land patents. But if you go and look at these land patents, and this is supposed to be the official record, they don't have a seal on them. Right? They're sitting there as a place for a seal. It's got the president's signatures. Don't have a seal. And they'll tell you, well, if you called for us or wanted one, we'd put a seal on it and send it to you. That's not the point. The point is it doesn't have a seal on it now. So where's the official register that ever had a seal in the first place and you actually gave this property to these people? Right? Because a lot of these are going to be like to the railroad company. Because, hey, there's railroad tracks right there. So, the federal government still uses a cadastral. And so I'm going to show you their address in a second. But as you can see, these states, to access a web page for a particular BLM cadastral office, use the pull-down menus. Hey, these are all cadastral offices. Arizona, Mr. Steve Hansen, Chief Cadastral Surveyor. Okay, so now if you take the word cadastral, and at least myself, I put it into Michigan's laws, they never use it. It's not in there. Maybe they don't have cadastral. Maybe the only cadastral we need to be concerned about is the federal cadastral, because they use one. Continuing on, the cadastre is a fundamental source of data in disputes and lawsuits between landowners. Hey, you use the cadastre for landowners. Do you have a cadastre? Right? If you don't have something that says cadastre, I don't believe you have something that's a cadastre. In the United States, Cadastre Survey with the Bureau of Land Management maintains records of all public lands. Such surveys often require detailed investigation of the history of land use, legal accounts, and other documents. That sentence there doesn't really make any sense, because they'll tell you when they did this, right, that in the beginning, they came out and surveyed this land, and 36 square miles, and they sold it off, and that's all they ever had to do with it. They don't know what happened after that. Right? But they're keeping track of the fact that it has been sold, and this is as of 2014, so I believe that if you lived in this township, you'd want to have your name on your land to show that you're the owner. And this is how they're keeping us off the land. Definition: a cadastre commonly includes details of ownership. Well, go figure. The tenure, the precise location. Therefore, GNSS coordinates are not used. The dimensions and area, right? Because it can't only be the dimensions of the box. It needs to tell you how much of the surface of the earth is in the box. That would be the area. The cultivations in the rule and value of individual parcels of land. Cadastres are used by many nations around the world, some in conjunction with other records such as a title register. Apparently it's quite important. The International Federation of Surveyors defines cadastre as follows. A cadastre is normally a parcel of land and up-to-date land information. Yeah, it'd be like ownership. Systems contain a record of interest in land. Oh, that would be like ownership. Rights, restrictions, responsibilities. And it usually includes a geometric description of the land parcel linked to other records describing the nature of the interest, the ownership or control of those interests, and often the value of the parcel and its improvements. Etymology. The word cadastre came into English through French from Latin. A register of the poll tax. The word forms the adjective cadastral, used in public administration primarily for ownership and taxation purposes. Right? So if you're not on the map, you're not paying your tax. You're not paying your poll tax. You're not paying the excise tax. Whatever the fee is you're supposed to pay, it hasn't been paid. You haven't paid your federal tax. That could just be $1. But whatever it is, we need to get on the map to show, hey, I'm living in this particular, on this particular section of the surface of the earth. I got this little box right here that I call mine, right? And they put your name on it, and now you're on the list. And so as an example, here's a poll tax receipt. Right now, they didn't fill it out. They didn't put the date on there, which they never do everything complete. They omitted the date, but it was received by somebody, resident, or received of somebody, resident of some ward, the sum of $1 poll tax for the year 1920 or 1912 for the support of the public schools, and that's how the schools get involved because. We didn't pay the tax for the school, and the school system actually existed before the states were states. They're federal. That's what Thomas Jefferson wanted. He wanted the schools to each get a section of this land. And so actually in this one, I believe it's 3 of them. They got 36, 16, and 4, I believe is what Bob found out. Those were all sections of land given to the public schools on the federal survey. So they're the landowners there for sure. Actually, they got theirs by legislation. Said it would be theirs on the survey. Okay, continuing on. So, right, your name isn't on there. Well, you haven't paid your tax. The terminology for cadastral division may include counties, parishes, ridings, hundreds, sections, lots, blocks, and city blocks. All these different names for cadastral division. And whatever one applies to us, we need to get into. Other languages that kept original T sound in the second syllable. Okay. History. Some of the earliest cadasters were ordered by Roman emperors to recover state-owned lands that had been appropriated by private individuals and thereby recover income from such holdings. So they took it away from the squatters. One such cadastre was done in 77 AD. A surviving stone marker of the survey reads, the Emperor Vespasian in the 8th year of his power, so as to restore state lands which the Emperor Augustus had given soldiers a legion to, but which in some years had been occupied by private individuals. Order a survey map to be made with a record of each century of the annual rental. In this way, Vespasian was able to reimpose taxation formerly uncollected on these lands. They do a cadastre and they charge a tax. Well, they do a cadastre and charge a tax and don't tell you don't pay your tax, well, then you're a squatter. And so this is the thing. This is why all this property is abandoned, because we're not on the land record of the Cadastral Survey. With the fall of Rome, the use of cadastral maps effectively discontinued. Medieval practice used written descriptions of the extent of land rather than using a more precise surveys. Only in the 16th and early 17th centuries did the use of cadastral maps resume, beginning in the Netherlands. With the emergence of capitalism in Renaissance Europe, well, that must have happened in the Netherlands because that's where it began, the need of cadastral maps emerged as to determine and express control of land as a means of production. And isn't that what capitalism is the private ownership of the means of production? The tools are means of production, so they made this map to be a tool to determine and express control of the land. So all they need to do is create the map, say you need to be on it, to show that you've paid your tax, otherwise you haven't paid your tax, you're a tax evader. And that's how they control the land, because then they take away your rights. They put a tax lien against your property. This took place first privately in land disputes and later spread to governmental practices as a means of more precise tax assessments. This took place first privately in land disputes and later spread to governmental practices as a means of more precise tax assessment. Oh, it's the assessment roll. Isn't that something? Not the tax, but the assessment that they use to create the tax or to divide what needs to be collected among those that are on the list. Cadastral surveys document the boundaries of land ownership by production of documents, diagrams, sketches, plans, plats in the USA, charts, and maps. Plats in the USA. Maybe we don't want to be in the USA. They were originally used to ensure reliable facts for land valuation and taxation. An example from early England in the Domesday is the Domesday Book of 1086. So the Domesday Book is a form of cadastral survey. Napoleon established a comprehensive cadastral system for France that is regarded as the forerunner of most modern versions. The Public Land Survey System is a cadastral survey of the United States originating in legislation in 1785 after international recognition of the United States. The Dominion Land Survey, a similar cadastral survey conducted in Western Canada, began in 1871 after the creation of the Dominion of Canada in 1867. So where's the land in Canada? It's in the Dominion of Canada. Right? Not the country of Canada or any other name. Well, no, it's in the Dominion of Canada, apparently, is where the cadastral surveys are. Both cadastral surveys were made relative to principal, meridian, and baselines. These cadastral surveys divided the surveyed area into townships. Hey, we looked at one. Square land areas, approximately 36 miles. Yep, 6 by 6. In some early surveys in Ohio, graded 25. They would have been like 5 by 5s. That would have been a military. Those were the military townships. These townships are divided into sections, each approximately 1 mile square. Unlike in Europe, the cadastral survey largely preceded settlement and as a result greatly influenced settlement patterns. Properties are generally rectangular. Boundary lines often run on cardinal bearings, and parcel dimensions are often fractionals or multiples of chains, and the BLM map is measured in chains. Land description in Western North America is principally based on these land surveys. And just real quick on that, so I don't forget. I'm sure I'll read it again, but so this is on the United States Geological Survey website, which is very interesting, right? USGS is an office, right? So the United States Geological Survey.gov, well, that must be an office, because all offices, like if you were to look at any other office, government office, it's whatever the acronym is for the office, .gov. So USGS is not just a survey, although it is, it's an office of the survey. Maybe they need to have our information. But if you did, how did I find this? USGS Public Land Survey System, and then, hey, you'll find the Public Land Survey System. The national map. and you click on it and you can read about it, this will say underneath this pretty colored map here that a legal land description of a section includes the state, principal meridian name, township and range designations with directions and sectional number. In other words, Nebraska, 6th principal meridian, T7N R2W section 5, blah, 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 right? And on this one for Bob, it's Township 3 North, Range 1 west of Gila and Salt River, Meridian, Arizona. It's not using the same format or the same designators as what the Usgs says, right? It didn't say to spell the words out. T7N R2W. That's what it's looking for. And this put Township 3 North, Range 1 West. Not the same. So, there's just something different. I'm just saying, pointing it out. And that's what we're going to spend a little time on after we get done with the videos. See if we can track all this stuff down. Okay, going on. The cadastral map. A cadastral map is a map that shows boundaries and ownership of land parcels. A cadastral map is a map that shows boundaries and ownership of land parcels. A cadastral map is a map that shows boundaries and ownership of land parcels. Hey, you may see that on a test. What does a cadastral map show? Shows the boundaries and ownership of land parcels. So you need to get on the cadastral map. That's what you can tell these people here. They're the chief cadastral surveyor. Say, put me on your map. California's got one too. Mr. Lance Bishop, Chief Branch of Geological Sciences. Colorado, Eastern States. Oh, that's where I would go to. Outstanding. Idaho, Montana, Nevada. You can find this. Right? You're looking for the people that are in charge of the cadastral maps. Some cadastral maps show additional details such as survey district names, unique identifying numbers for parcels, certificate of title numbers. All right, so you would think, well, that's what, then that's what these numbers are here. These little numbers are supposed to be the land patents. Is that the title? Certificate of title. Position of existing structures, section or lot numbers and their respective area, adjoining the adjacent street names, selected boundary dimensions, and references to prior maps. So it could have a lot more on it than what we're seeing here on this map. The U.S. NOAA Coastal Service Center has released a Cadastre web tool to illustrate offshore wind power suitability of eastern seaboard areas. Look at that, because how do you survey the ocean? I guess you could. The cadastral documentation comprises the documentary material submitted to Cadastre or land administration offices for renewal of cadastral recordings. All right, that's cadastral documentation. You might want to write that down. Comprises the documentary materials submitted to Cadastre or land administration offices for renewal of cadastral recordings. So I couldn't find the word cadastre being used, but I don't know that we don't have some kind of land administration office here in Michigan. It's possible. They got a Michigan land bank. Is that what they're talking about? Cadastral documentation is kept in paper or electronic form. Jurisdiction statutes and further provisions specify the content and form of the documentation, as well as the persons authorized to prepare and sign the documentation, including concerned parties, owners, etc., licensed surveyors, and legal advisors. The office concerned reviews the submitted information. If the documentation does not comply with stated provisions, the office may set a deadline for the applicant to submit completed documentation. Oh, so your stuff goes to the office and they send you something to the wrong address, you don't get it, they say, well, I guess you don't want to do it, and then they never finish it up. So We need to make sure that we follow up and we see it on a map, that we're in the, that we're in the book. Despite the age of Cadastre, a notion of cadastral documentation emerged late in English language as the institution of Cadastre developed outside English-speaking countries. In a Danish textbook, 1 out of 15 chapters regarded the form and content of documents concerning subdivision. Wow, they're really interested in land, and the Danes are. Early textbook of international scope focused on recording in terms of land registration, technical aspects of cadastral survey. Yeah, I guess this would be important, because if this determines if you're the landowner or not, you had better understand the system. Yet note that cadastral survey has been carried out within a tight framework of legislation. With the view of assessing transaction cost, a European project modeling real property transactions charted procedures for transfer of ownership and other rights in land and buildings. Cadastral documentation is described. Finland, surveyor draws up a cadastral map and cadastral documents. They don't tell us what 9 is. And then 10, surveyor sends cadastral documents to cadastral authority. We got to figure out who that is. Who is our cadastral authority? In Australia, similar activities are referred to as lodgement of plan of subdivision at Land Titles Office. Lodgement of plan of subdivision at Land Titles Office, right? That's how the English would say surveyor sends cadastral documents to cadastral authorities. We couldn't use the same words. Now we're going to change it to make it confusing. Cadastral surveying is a subfield of surveying that specializes in establishment and reestablishment of real property boundaries. It's an important component in legal creation of properties. I'll say that again. It's an important component of legal creation of properties. A cadastral surveyor, so now we're right. Cadastral surveyor. So, hey, surveyor, are you a cadastral surveyor? Would be a really good question to ask. Must apply both the spatial measurement principles and general surveying and legal principles, such as respect of neighboring titles. Cadastral surveying refers to the cadaster or collective records of land that many nations have established. Duties and role of a cadastral surveyor. One of the primary roles of a land surveyor is to determine the boundary of real property on the ground. The boundary has already been established and described in legal documents on official plans and maps prepared by attorneys, engineers, and other land surveyors. So you don't need to go measure it again, right? Needs to go and look at what's already been done. The corners of property will either have been monumented by a prior surveyor or monumented by a surveyor hired to perform survey of a new boundary, which has been agreed upon by adjoining landowners. So everybody has to agree to the boundary. Okay? Principles of cadastral surveying. A common use of survey is to determine legal property boundary. First stage of such survey, known as a resurvey, is to obtain copies of the deed description and all other available documents from the owner. Right? So you say you want a resurvey, it doesn't mean come out to my property. It means go grab all the damn records. Let's start there. The deed description is that of the deed and not a tax statement or other incomplete document. They just told you your tax statement's an incomplete document. Right? And so when they send you a tax statement and say it's for your land, it really isn't, because they're not using the proper description that's on the deed. And if you said, no, this is my description, I don't know who you're talking to, they wouldn't be able to tax you. We're using an incomplete document as far as the legal description on taxes. The surveyor should then obtain copies of deed description and maps of adjoining properties, any records from the municipality or county, utility maps, and any records of surveys. Depending on which region the survey is located in, some or most of its information may not be available or even exist. Whether the information exists or not, a thorough search should be conducted so that no records are overlooked. Copies of deeds usually can be located in county recorder's office. Maps or plats can usually be found in county recorder surveyor's office. These arrangements will vary state to state, survey system to survey system, so some familiarity may be needed. When all records are assembled, the surveyor examines the documents for errors, such as closure errors. Got to be able to make a box and close it off and say this is the area inside the box, or the survey is incorrect. When a meets and bound description is involved, the seniority of the deeds must be determined. The title abstract usually gives order of seniority for the deed related to the tract being surveyed and should be used if available. After this data is gathered and analyzed, the field survey may commence. So all that's done first, and now we can go do a walk. The initial survey operation should be concentrated on locating monuments. In urban regions, monuments should be sought initially, but in the absence of monuments, property corners marked by iron pins, metal survey markers, iron pipes, and other features possibly establishing a line of possession should be located. So, they want you to go to the monument that the federal government put in and start there, not what some Joe Schmo surveyor stuck in the ground. When the approximate positions of the boundaries of the property have been located, a traverse is run around the property. While the control traverse is being run, ties should be measured, and all details relevant to the boundary should be acquired. This includes, but is not limited to, locating the property corners, monuments, fences, hedgerows, walks, walls, and all buildings on the lot. The surveyor then takes this collection of data and compares it to the records which were received. When a solution is reached, the chosen property corners are coordinated and ties by direction and distance are computed to the nearest traverse point. Once this has been established, the features on the lot can be drawn, dimensions can be shown, and the features to the boundary line and map or plat is prepared for the client. And they want this all done, basically using what the federal government put on the ground, not what the state or somebody else put on the ground. That's how I'm reading it. Monuments are categorized into two groups, are known as natural and artificial. Natural monuments are those things, such as trees, large stones, or other substantial natural occurring objects, that were in place before the survey was made. An artificial monument is anything within the regulations which marks property boundary, having been placed by landowners, surveyors, engineers, or other. They may be referred to as iron pins or pipes, stakes, trees, concrete monuments, or whatever the surveyor decides to use within the regulations of the area. The court has held that natural monuments take precedence over artificial monuments because they are more certain in identification and less likely to be disturbed. Over time, construction, maintenance, roads, and many other human acts, along with blah, 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 well, you can imagine, hey, that's why you had to have it resurveyed. Land surveyors are often compelled to consider other evidence such as fence location, wood lines, monuments, neighboring properties, and people's recollections. This other evidence is known as intrinsic evidence and is a fairly common principle. Intrinsic evidence is defined as evidence outside the writings, in this case evidence outside of the deed. Intrinsic evidence is held to be of equal value to evidence from another source. Well, the other source would be the deed. Today's land surveyor sets monuments at actual physical points on the ground that define angle points of boundary lines dividing neighboring land parcels. Land parcels. These monuments are most often 1/2, 5-inch iron rebar rods or pipes placed at 18-inch minimal depth, but they may vary from state to state. Okay. Many properties have considerable problems with regard to improper bounding and miscellaneous or miscalculations in past surveys, titles, easements, and wildlife crossing. All good reasons to have a cadastral survey done. Now, I don't know how to do that. I'm just saying that's what they're talking about. So give me just a second. Okay, in the last couple of videos I showed some excerpts or schedules, I guess, that's what they call them, out of Bobby's title insurance. And so on the owner's policy in Schedule A, it had said, because this is also homeowner's policy of title insurance, Schedule A, it had said street name or street address of the land. Street address of the land. And it was spelt out West Gelding Drive, Surprise, Arizona. Right? That's the street address of the land. So I guess you give that to the cadastral surveyor and say, well, this is the street address of the land according to my policy of title insurance. I'd like to have you resurvey. Now, right, so that is the street address of the land. But the street address of, but, I go back here. So this one is on the Schedule A to the Alta Extended Coverage Loan Policy. So this, they said, is to the to Mears, basically, the name of the insured, Mears. We were trying to figure out why is Mears being insured. Now, Bob didn't know this happened. This is some of the paperwork that came by him contacting the servicer of his loan and, asking for more information, which the last two videos I did. And if you sort my videos on Rob Ryder on YouTube by upload date, you will see the last two videos I did. And that was covering information that we're speaking of here. But on here it says the land referred to in this policy is situated in the state of Arizona, County of Maricopa, and is described as follows. So they're not going to describe on this Schedule A the way they described on this Schedule A. This Schedule A says that the street address of the land. I shouldn't say that. Land referred to in this policy is situated. Yeah, it's got the same thing. Nevertheless, street address of the land. But this is what they want to use. Lot 104 of corrected plat of Royal Ranch Unit 1, Parcel 3, according to the plat of record in the office of the County Recorder of Maricopa County, Arizona, recorded in book something or other of maps. Didn't say plat, said maps. Page 10. Now, I don't know if that's the correct address, because that isn't anything like what the Public Land Survey said that your legal land description should look like. All right, they said a legal land description of a section includes a state, principal, meridian, townships, and range designations with directions and section numbers, yada, yada, yada. Now, that only gets it down to the 1 mile. I understand that. And then within that 1 mile square is the rest of it. So, again, that's why I want somebody to tell me if I'm on if you're on the right land or not. How come that didn't work? I thought I did 2 pages. Here's that page. Because I had wanted to show, maybe someplace else. No. Okay. What I wanted to show was that while on this, the street address of the land, they use West Gelding Drive all written out. On the correspondence that Bob's getting from, like, the servicer, they use W instead of West and DR instead of Drive, right? They're not sending it to the street address of the land. They're sending it to a mailing address that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the street address of the land. And so this is where we need to be registered, is in the street address of the land. So that has to be in some assessor's book someplace where they have all the street addresses, right? We've been looking for addresses for the property for quite some time for the land, so those that follow me know what I'm talking about. And we need to have our name put next to it. Right now, there's no name there, and so it's shown as abandoned, right? Whether you own the land or you occupy the land as a tenant, doesn't matter. You got the right of use of the land. Your name needs to be in the book that you're either the owner or the occupant. And instead, they're all vacant. And you may want to take a minute and stop and write this down, right? Because I don't know that you can find this here, which is a list of all the various cadastral surveyors. without it. So it's www.blm.gov/cadastral/business/contact/HTML. Anyways, in that section, if you were to get there, because they've updated the Bureau of Land Management's website, and it doesn't quite read this way, but this is the way they sent it to Bob, and it still works, and so we're going to use it to show these things, because it just shows that they have an office for cadastral surveys. And on this page here, it says about these cadastral surveys. Again, this is Bureau of Land Management talking. Cadastral surveys deal with one of the oldest and most fundamental facets of human society, ownership of land. Cadastral surveys deal with one of the oldest and most fundamental facets of human society, ownership of land. Hey, what do they have to do with ownership of land? They are the surveys that create, mark, define, retrace, reestablish the boundaries and subdivisions of public lands of the United States. They are not, see, this is lowercase public lands, right? Not uppercase, proper case. Right? This is just the lands. Subdivision of the lands. It was all public lands. They are not scientific surveys of an informative character, which may be amended due to the availability of additional information or because of changes in conditions or standards of accuracy. Although cadastral surveys employ scientific methods and precise measurements, they are based upon law and not upon science. Cadastral surveys are the foundation upon which rests title to all land that is now or was once part of the public domain of the United States. Public domain didn't go away. The PLSS is used to divide public domain lands, which are lands owned by the federal government for the benefit of the citizens of the United States. And so it has something to do with the public land survey system. And, well, there you are. Now, okay, yeah, just one more minute. So, in closing, what is a cadastral map? It's a map that shows boundaries and ownership of land parcels. Makes it pretty simple. We need to find out where the cadastral map is. And I know you're going to get blank looks from people when you say these things, but maybe that's why we start at the federal level. And because they still use the word, and they can't get away from what it's for. They're the ones who wrote the book on it. So I'm going to leave it at that. With just one last thing. Please, if you can, donate. PayPal, mail, credit card. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. Have a great day. See ya.